Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with a reset blog. I have seen a few booktubers doing this recently and I really like it. This one is probably almost 100% inspired by Kayla from Books and Lala. I loved her recent August reset blog. A reset blog is kind of a great time to get reorganized and to start thinking about content for the future. And I really thought this would be a great time for me to do one because I am looking ahead and I am thinking about Victober. And if you don't know what Victober is, it is a readathon that runs throughout the month of October that is dedicated to reading Victorian classics. It's my favorite booktube event all year. And it's an event that I plan for year round, or at least I intend to, but that never really happens. I feel like I'm reading a bit all over the place right now. The end of the summer is a really interesting time for me on BookTube because I feel just the excitement about things like Victober and end of year reading, and just reading in the autumn is just the ideal for me. I feel like I'm saving up all year for autumn reading. And then I forget about the fact that autumn and winter, kind of the end of the year, the last 4 months of the year, they are always incredibly busy. And I don't actually have as much time to read as what I might think. So I feel like the end of summer, August, is always a hazy period. And frankly, so is September. September is always a month where I feel kind of crunch time because I often am planning Victober content. But along the way, I thought I would do something similar to Kayla, where she kind of talked about questions that she has been asked about her video making process. There were so many questions left over from my BookTube anniversary video that I did want to address that I thought were really great questions. And I think a video like this, a vlog like this, might be the best time. And so a lot of questions did come through about content ideas. How do I create video ideas? How do I come up with them? And how far in advance are they? And I know I told y'all in my BookTube anniversary video that, to be frank, I really am not working that far in advance. I think you'd be really shocked to know that really even things like Victober events, I am planning kind of by the seat of my pants, like it's just something that I will come up with here in the next month. But I thought that I would take you through kind of my book journal, which has gone through so many changes this year and is now just in total merged with my regular planner. It's interesting, we had this past week at work, we had a workshop that was talking about bullet journaling, and the woman who was running it was talking a lot about how she separated a bullet journal for professional life versus personal life because she works from home a lot, and so she really did want kind of a separation between home and work. I loved working remotely, and I actually didn't really have that problem because I could kind of walk away from this area and I didn't have to see it. And I know a lot of people who were working from home didn't have that, and I really enjoyed working remotely. But I did kind of come into this year thinking that that's kind of what I wanted to do, that BookTube should have a separate planner. But in many ways, BookTube is also professional, so I don't necessarily want to say that I would call that a personal planner, but I'm not really planning much personally, if that makes sense. I don't really feel like enough happens that it would mean that I should really have a different bullet journal or a different planner for like social events and travel. I need to know all of that for my professional life and for BookTube as well. So it's just simpler for me to put everything on one calendar. But I have had ideas formulating throughout the year, and I have a new planner. I'll show it to you. I need to clean off this desk. That should probably be part of what we do. But I have this, which is my NCT planner. The best thing about this is that the weeks are blank. Now the months aren't, which I think will make this a struggle going into next year. I started this back in June, and here's just kind of a regular week. This is very plain, but some weeks are more eventful than others. We have stuff like this. But I did think at one time that probably what I should do, since these weeks are blank, is that I could have 1 week be professional life and the week beside it be BookTube. The issue with that is that some weeks I don't really have a lot going on BookTube. You know, to me, it's just more useful to see it in the same place. But I do see the point and I see the perspective on having two different things, because there are things about BookTube in particular that I feel like I should be tracking, particularly like when books come in. And I think if I have a set list somewhere of all of the books that I've hauled in a year or things like that, that also leads to easier content creation. But I thought I would take you through my planning process for Victober. So I will turn you around. We do need to clean up this desk. That should be part of the reset vlog, certainly. So as you might can see, this is my desk for now, everything. This is typically just my crafting desk, but it has recently become the War and Peace desk because this edition of War and Peace is so absolutely massive. It's so heavy. I don't feel like I can really carry it around the house. I mean, look at this. It cramps my hand. The bad news is I do have neck problems that mean I should like hold text up directly in front of my eyes. And that kind of compounds this as not the ideal reading experience. I really did just want a physical copy because I really wanted to annotate, as you can see. So this is a book that I'm having to take slowly, but it's really taking up a lot of space on the desk because it's a huge book, and I have out all my highlighters and everything, which I have been using. I have out these memo pads to be taking notes on for War and Peace just because I think it's kind of pretty. But that's kind of what's going on with this. So let's move this out of the way. Let's move all of my annotation things over there to that as well. This is my current K-pop journal, and I don't often feel the need to put this away because I'm often really trying to work in it 9 times out of 10. So it's really small. I should put it away. This is my favorite spread I have ever done. And this is my second favorite spread I've ever done just because it's so weird. So we can move this out of the way. I was doing kind of Christmas in July, and that's what all this is. I don't know if that's in frame, but I really want to kind of put Christmas things in a separate location. But this is my current planner and my current notebook. And I'll show you the basic layout. So here is June, which is the first month that I ever used this. And I decided to use this kind of checklist area over here as ideas for videos. My goal has been to try to remember to carry over these video ideas from this section that I didn't utilize, that I didn't do in that last month. I've not been very good about that. So as you can see, I have a couple of things here that I didn't do. I have reading the highest and lowest rated on my TBR. I have books about authors or publishing, or basically books about books. That would be a recommendations video. Fae recommendations, Greek myth recommendations. I didn't do any of those. Then July, this looks super empty, but I think it's basically because July was so busy, I never had time to update this. But I have dark academia books on my TBR, and this is the thing. I knew when I wrote that down that I wanted that to be a video that would go up in the fall. So I do try to just write down ideas as they come to me, whether I would film them right now or not, because I am one of those people who often says, I'll remember that. I'm going to remember that. That's what I say every single time. And I promise you I don't. And so that's why it's really important that I do write this stuff down. I'm a very physical person. And so I have all series reading. This is a video that I am currently working on where I'm going to look at all of the series that I have ongoing, and I can make some decisions about whether or not I would like to DNF some of those series. And then I can kind of know what to prioritize moving forward. The best books I've ever read according to Goodreads and the worst, those were videos that I did wind up putting up in July. Classic mysteries, I don't even know what this means because I think I was going to do mysteries for classics lovers, like retellings. I don't know. Reading Kindle Unlimited, I did that. A 24-hour readathon, I did that. And a Kindle tour, I have a question mark by because I wasn't really sure what that video idea meant. August is also kind of blank, so I need to go back in, but see, I have classic novel retellings. Oh my gosh. So see, that might be a separate idea from classic mysteries. Oh dear. I wonder what I meant by that. See, this is useful for me. My booktube anniversary video, which I did, so I can check that off. But so far this month, it's been kind of dry, or when I've had a video idea, I just kind of went on and filmed it. But here is October, which is very, very blank, except for 3 video ideas that I have for Victober: Penny Dreadfuls, 24-hour reading vlog, and Crystal Palace. The Crystal Palace, if it goes the way that I want it to, will be a history chat. But I also know that I want to do some reading sprints that are themed around Victober. And this is a great time because I can kind of take an erasable pen while this is blank, and I can plan out content for that month. You may say to me, Jenny, why are we thinking about Victober content at this time of year? It is August. Well, last year I did something that really helped me. And I think this is just something that would in general help me on BookTube is to pre-film more. I spent almost the entirety of September last year pre-filming for Victober because I did wind up going out of town in October. And so I really wanted to make sure that I knew content was going to go up. And I also tried to do it, I think, the year before. And I've always wanted to do this with readathons in particular because I feel like I want to put out a bunch of content for certain readathons, but at the same time, if I am focusing on making BookTube content, I'm probably not that focused on reading. So I really wanted to pre-film in order to kind of leave time during the readathon just to be reading, just to be really enjoying it, and maybe only keeping up with a weekly vlog here and there. So that's definitely something that's really factored into my planning process this year. So I only have 4 video ideas so far for Victober, as you could see. And one of them is a reading sprint, which I have been doing very well on. I made a vow to myself last year I was going to do reading sprints on this channel every other month with Christy Lewis. So we have done that now. We have done it for almost a year. So I'm really proud of that. So that's not technically something that I can schedule. A 24-hour reading vlog will also probably be kind of hectic for me to do, but I have really enjoyed doing them this year. I've done a couple and I think it would be fun to do for Victober. The other 2 will just kind of be like informative videos. So things are up in the air for me with Victober content. This is also something that I got a question about with content creation, was just in general, how do you keep ideas new and fresh? And that's very hard for me for something like Victober or something like a yearly event where you're not reading new books, if you know what I'm saying. Victober by default is a classics readathon. And so at a certain point, I feel like you honestly feel as though you have tackled the big famous books. I've spent 5 years on BookTube and I have done Victober every single year. And so every year I do kind of worry, am I going to even find anything that captures my attention? Am I going to have anything to make content about? And to me, making content is a little bit more worrisome than reading something. There are so many great kind of forgotten books out there, but that does make me worried sometimes about whether people will be interested in the content if you're not talking about a book that's relatively popular. So that's an interesting dichotomy that's there in the back of my mind sometimes. So this is really early, but I only have 4 videos and there's 4 weeks. So I think we can kind of plan out at least 1 Victober video a week. And I think we can also plan out some Halloween reading. I am also really interested in doing some Halloween videos this year. So something that I wanted to talk about was literary horror. I do want to keep a variety of content going up in October because not everyone who is subscribed is interested in classics, which I totally understand because Victober is really the month out of the year that I focus on them. That's really the only month where I get any classics read basically anymore. And I feel like I save everything for that month, which is a real shame. But I also really love Halloween, and that has been hard for me in the past couple of years, is balancing Halloween content alongside Victober content. So I did want to do that, and I also wanted to do a video about vampire books, whether that is a vlog or whether that's recommendations. That's kind of up in the air right now, but that's okay. We're over a month out. I think maybe with my pencil, I will go in and write on each individual day something. So October starts on the 1st, which will be a Sunday. That's kind of an unfortunate thing because I think last year I did my Victober reading sprints on the 1st, which I thought was just a great way to kick off Victober. But maybe I'll do it again. Otherwise, the 1st or 2nd Thursday of the month have generally been when reading sprints have been. So I'm going to write that down up here. We can always erase this. This is kind of my general process, especially when a month is really blank like this. A history chat like the Crystal Palace won't do that well in the analytics right off the bat. So I want to make sure that I balance that on a week with maybe something else. I'm not sure when to do that. So maybe let's say we'll do that the 17th. And the 24-hour readathon will be something that will either have to be that first or that second weekend. I think in order to get it done, I think I would have to start at one of those weekends. So maybe let's go on and say that the 24-hour readathon will go up on the 13th or the 20th. And that leaves the back half of the month for some more Halloween stuff. Well, speaking of a reset blog, something that we are going to probably have to do is go over this tiny shelf. I have been using this as a placeholder while I have been waiting for my new shelves to come in. You can't see it, but that's where they're going to go, and I'm actually going to get started on that relatively soon. But this has been a placeholder for essentially what I'm calling TBR books. This is not my entire TBR, and I have moved some things off of it. And I tell you what, I think that's been really encouraging to me as regards a TBR shelf in general. I think I feel good noticing that I have moved things off of this shelf. I think it's just crazy fun. I've tried to keep together book of the month and also hardcovers. And down here is stuff that I'm going to say I don't feel is that much of a priority. So I have some manga, I have a couple of books that I was just given, and then I have a couple of fantasy romances and stuff like that. And those are things that I find are really great during a reading slump or when you really need something fun. As I said, here at the end of the summer, I do feel like I'm trying to crunch in a lot of fun reading because I feel like fall is a time that I really theme my reading around autumnal, spooky books, classics. And so I feel like I'm trying to get everything in before that time. And there are some things on this shelf that I have just been saving for autumn, but I did want to give you a little peek into my victober TBR. Speaking about planning for victober, this is just kind of spoilers for my TBR. I always plan certain books for victober. In fact, sometimes I am planning that TBR from the time the last year's victober ends. I just really enjoy victober. And another question that I often get is just kind of the hold that victober has on us. Why does it have us in a chokehold? I just think it's one of those really wonderful readathons where a large community of people are involved. And I notice this every year. I see certain people who comment on my channel and on other channels. That's really the only time I see their usernames. So I think there are some people who are only on booktube at victober, which I think is really great. But I just think the community aspect of it is really fun. And I think it's also just a really cozy, perfectly autumnal readathon. I have 2 books specifically for victober this year. And so one of them is Poor Miss Finch by Wilkie Collins. I need a Wilkie Collins on my TBR every year. Y'all know this. I feel like I am exhausting the majority of what he has that's really good, but this is definitely my Wilkie Collins choice. And we also have Barnaby Rudge, which is by Charles Dickens. And I also often say that I want to tackle a Charles Dickens, and it never really occurs. These are the only 2 that I have so far. I have a couple of other ideas going on in my head, and it's actually really hard to plan for victober TBRs and even in general victober content on the books that you would read when we don't have out the announcement videos yet. So I think the announcement videos will come out around the 1st of September. And so then I often already have books in mind that I kind of force fit into the prompts. But this is kind of my current TBR shelf. I see a lot of things over here that are also TBR, and I think my goal, speaking of resetting, speaking of just doing something new and doing it for you and getting organized, I think one of the new shelves is just going to be entirely TBR. And I think that's really going to be of value to me because I really do think this is satisfying. Like when you move something off of this shelf onto a red pile, I really did feel good about that because I felt like that was something very tangible. So I definitely see why other booktubers want to have a TBR shelf. I think that's a really great idea. over the place in terms of what I'm currently reading. So I just thought that I would show you kind of what the current TBR pile is for this current month going into September. Twisted Love is the main book that I'm in the middle of. It is a romance. It's kind of a dark romance, and I'm really enjoying it. It's very Wattpad in style. I don't necessarily mean that as a bad thing, but I really do want to get through that. I feel guilty because this is starting another series, which I don't feel I should do. The Vampires of El Norte was my book of the month choice this month, and I'm debating whether I should start with this or if I should start with The Hacienda by Isabel Cañez. So that one is a little bit up in the air, but that's kind of on my current TBR. On my Kindle, I'm also reading All's Well by Mona Awad, which I think is really fun, and I think I'm probably really going to enjoy. I've been putting this off because I wanted to do an unhinged woman blog, and I think that would be really fun. But this is kind of what's up on the docket for me, which feels incredibly hectic and varied in terms of genre. My TBR is kind of all over the place because I feel a little bit slumpy. I think that's natural for me at this time of year because it's not quite time for like fall reading or even to prepare for fall content that much. Like, it's really quite early to get started pre-filming. Something that I would normally do and something that I thought about doing in this vlog was actually decorating this shelf in particular for fall, just so that I can go on and I can start pre-filming. I feel like it is super early to even be talking about that, but my mental health goes up in the fall, so I really like to urge it in. But my TBR feels like it's a bit all over the place just because I feel like I don't really know what I want to do right now. I don't really know what I want to commit to. And I think that makes me feel a little bit like I'm in a slump because I'm enjoying everything that I'm reading, but it's not like I am really excited about anything. And I have felt that way for the past couple of months. I think it's just how unexcited I am by a lot of the stuff, not just on my TBR, but just in general. I feel like I'm finding it hard to find new exciting books. And I think that also is because I'm really excited for this back half of the year. That's also when there tends to be the most in terms of new releases that I'm interested in. And that leads me into one of the other questions that y'all asked, which was about being in a reading slump and being a booktuber, and kind of what does booktube look like if you were in a reading slump. And I can tell you from like really horrid experience, it's not a great place to be, because at the start of last year, I was in probably the worst reading slump I've ever had. And in fact, the only time I would ever say I've truly been in a reading slump where I don't want to read and where nothing is good to me for a very long time, for months on end, that was at the beginning of 2022 for me. And that really impacted my content, which I think in turn impacted my channel. It impacted my subscriber base. I feel like a lot of people kind of unsubscribed around that time, and I understand why, because what is booktube if you're not making booktube content? And for me, a slump is really tied into booktube, because if I'm not reading, I'm really not on booktube, period. I'm not watching booktube, but I'm also not creating content for booktube. And so it's just a very symbiotic relationship. And I think the hardest times for me as a booktuber have been when I really felt like I was in a reading slump. But sometimes it's like right now, I feel like I have a little bit more in terms of ideas for content than I do in terms of wanting to read. And sometimes that happens too. And those are really weird times that I would take time where I would normally read and I start making content. And I feel like that's kind of been the past couple of weeks for me. I feel like that's just been in general the month of August. And sometimes I have the reverse. Sometimes I'm reading a lot and I'm reading really quickly. And that means I don't have time at all to think about content. And a lot of times I regret that, because if I'm reading a lot, I'm probably really enjoying most of what I'm reading. And I often wish sometimes that I had reading vlogs of those occasions when I was really into something. But this has been an interesting reading year for me. And it's also just in general been an interesting year on BookTube. But I hope that I'll get out of this mood. I think the thing is, I just need to pick one of these 3 books and I need to really commit to it and just stick with one until I finish it. I think that will be the best way to help me feel like I'm on track. I'm just gonna wrap up the reset blog here. Even though I didn't really get into bookshelf content, which was kind of what I was interested in doing, I really wanted to get my bookshelves up this weekend. It is just so extremely hot. You go outside and you just feel like you need to sit down because you've been hit in the face by the humidity. So I don't think this was the ideal weekend to do that. And in fact, just in general, summer, maybe not the ideal season to be moving furniture around, but that can be an entirely different video. That can be an entirely different series. I'm really excited about those bookshelves so that I can finally have like a video dedicated on my channel to my entire physical TBR, where I can really evaluate the series that I have ongoing, stuff like that, because certainly I do still need to do a little bit of culling and a little bit of unhauling in that shelf upstairs that I have in my bedroom, which you could see was just an absolute disaster. I feel like this shelf, even if I don't cull anything, I would really like to move things around. I feel like this has looked very samey for years and years, and I want to just move some things around and have maybe some prettier books on this shelf. But maybe I'll say that for the next reset vlog. I really enjoyed this, and I feel like if I did this again, I would be far more organized and it would probably be a better experience. But I really feel good. I really feel great about having done this. So I hope that y'all really enjoyed it. But let me know your thoughts on all of this down below. I would love to know if you do a reset each month, how you go into each month to feel kind of open and organized. But that's going to be all for me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.